This is Marianne Martindale from the Alliance for a Better Utah, and welcome to the Better Utah Beat. Our first story comes from Tooele. The Salt Lake Tribune posted a story about Bill Wright and his primary opponent, Merrill Nelson. Representative Wright, you will remember, was the sponsor of last session's HB 363, or as we like to call it, the No Sex Ed Bill, a bill that would have taken away the rights of parents to determine whether or not their teens were taught abstinence-based sex education in school. Despite public disapproval, Representative Wright and his supporters, like the Eagle Forum, pushed for the bill, and it passed easily out of both the House and the Senate, sending a strong message that lawmakers viewed themselves better able to decide how Utah children should be raised than their parents. The public backlash was loud and swift and included a petition with over 30,000 Utah signatures, a public rally that filled the rotunda, and an onslaught of phone calls and emails telling Governor Herbert to veto HB 363. Surprisingly, he did just that, and HB 363 was vetoed. Interestingly enough, Representative Wright received very little backlash from the public thanks to his calculated media strategy of not commenting on the news. Merrill Nelson, Wright's primary opponent, is trying to raise the issue with voters, painting Wright as out of touch and unwilling to listen to his constituents, while Representative Wright, despite this resounding defeat of his bill, is still trying to defend it, going so far as saying he will likely run it again next session. This isn't the first time we've seen this dismissive attitude from legislators. They ignore the public or back off of an issue only after public outrage, and then reaffirm their support and intent once the attention has turned elsewhere. Better Utah has dedicated an entire project on our website to these issues under the title, Is the Legislature Listening? We've seen it for Margaret Dayton and her support for the Grandma Bill, last year's debacle that landed the legislature back in a costly special session to overturn it, Bill Wright's stubborn refusal to back off from both his No Sex Ed bill and the immigration bills, and don't even get us started on Senator Howard Stevenson's yearly school voucher attempt. It is clear these extreme conservatives on Capitol Hill are far more concerned with pushing their own agenda and the agendas of special interest groups than they are with representing the will of the people. Their blatant disregard for the public trust should be the most telling aspect of an election, but it is incumbent on us as voters to pay attention. In other news this week, we at Better Utah have been watching with interest as conservative groups, such as the Sutherland Institute, have been on the radio, in op-eds, and on their websites, demanding that Utah government make divorce more difficult, condemning court rulings that overturn the Defense of Marriage Act, and yet simultaneously making their case for the importance of personal freedoms in other areas of the law. We'd like to consider that position, because if ever there was an indisputable argument in favor of personal freedom, it is the decisions made between a married couple that have no impact on the rest of society. Thus, the positions of these conservative groups leaves us scratching our heads, for they sound rather like the opposite of personal freedom and more like intrusive big government. Conservative organizations are constantly preaching the virtues of the free market, how all the country's problems will be solved if we simply get out of the way of business and allow it to just chart its own course, free of regulations or government rules and impediments. It is difficult to reconcile this notion with their position of intrusive government when it comes to personal choice. They attempt to claim that corporations should have the freedom to do as they see fit, while individuals should not be allowed the same freedoms. If the free market would have supposedly solved the financial crisis by allowing big banks to fail, why does the same not apply to a married couple's personal decision to divorce? If corporations should be allowed to conduct business without regulation or restriction, why is the same freedom not extended to parents whose only wish is to raise their children as they see fit? Either you believe in allowing people to make decisions for themselves, or you don't. It's time to call these positions out for what they truly are: hypocrisy shrouded under the cloak of freedom, while in reality placing a heavier and heavier government footprint in people's homes. Until next week, this is Marianne Martindale from the Alliance for a Better Utah with this week's edition of the Better Utah Beat. Have a great week, and remember that together we can make a better Utah.
For more information about the Alliance for a Better Utah's current projects, please visit betterutah.org and kickalec.out.org.